This brief presentation will overview the self-psychology work of Heinz Kohut and transactional analysis developed by Eric Berne. I show here kind of the configuration of his method and the famous book during the 1960s era, Games People Play. First, though, we will focus on the work of Kohut. The background to this would be psychoanalytic self-psychology is the theoretical school of Heinz Kohut and provides the theoretical basis for most of the therapeutic benefits of contemporary psychoanalysis, or psychoanalysis as we know it today. While rejecting the primary importance of innate Freudian sexual drives in the organization of the human psyche, self-psychology was the first major psychoanalytic movement in the United States to recognize the critical role of empathy in explaining human development and psychoanalytic change. So here he introduces the importance of empathy, as we've seen and will see in other theorists' approaches to this particular area. Since 1959, Kohut and followers have transformed the practice of psychoanalysis and psychotherapy by deepening the therapist's empathic attunement to the patient and describing fundamental human needs for healthy development, particularly idealizing this concept of mirroring and twinship or alter ego needs. He discusses healthy narcissism. And here we have a picture of Narcissus looking at his image in the water while Narcissus and his friend, who cannot seem to get his attention because of his focus on himself. However, there's a suggestion here that healthy narcissism actually would be the appearance of a strong, vital, cohesive self striving with ambition and ideals toward the full realization of a person's skills and talent. So there's this sort of healthy narcissism, which one in Whitney Houston's song may fall into that area of loving yourself, which is the greatest love of all, according to her take on that. By the way, Narcissus's friend's name was Echo, Narcissus and Echo, because all she would get is hearing herself back and Narcissus not being present because he's in a trance with himself. I like the myth, that otherwise I wouldn't trouble you further with it. Moving on. Freud's method of free association with the empathic ambiance of the consulting room can eventually develop into the analysis of self-object transferences. So in other words, stepping, as we talked before, stepping into the client's reality and being present to them, listening very intently to what they're saying and responding in an appropriate way. This empathic atmosphere allows the client to work on transference kinds of issues as well as other issues within the therapeutic context. Repetitions of this disruption restoration process allows a person's sense of self to change and develop in fundamental ways that define the psychoanalytic process. So here we're looking at the process. Some therapies focus on content, some focus on process, some focus on different other kinds of methodologies. But in this case, this idea of disruption and restoration is an important element in the self-psychology that Kohut promoted. Moving then to transactional analysis, which I'm a lot more familiar with. Eric Berne had an office in Carmel, California during my late adolescence. I remember him in the news. But I've found that students in the past have utilized this approach quite well in working with clients. Here, intersubjective systems theory is a major contemporary school growing from self-psychology. So Berne gleaned a number of his things from Kohut's work. It's a two-person theory of psychology consistent with modern systems theory and self-psychology. So basically here you have what we call the parent, adult, and child. And so when you're having a discussion with another human being, you're relating at one of these three levels. A lot of times one tries to say at the adult level, but if someone is criticizing or ridiculing you, it's sort of a parent-child arrangement. And trying to analyze what goes on there is a lot of what Byrne did. And it can be helpful particularly in talking about transference, for instance. You can kind of graph this out in terms of the client acting as child to you as the parent in terms of the therapist as an example. This is a very nicely visual approach to talking about interactions between individuals. The parent ego state is demonstrated through behaviors, thoughts, and feelings copied from our parents or parent figures. A lot of time, the punishing elements may be part of that we run into in working with clients. The adult state would be behaviors, thoughts, feelings, which are client responses to the here and now. And we'll hear these terms here and now a lot in therapy, particularly around the 60s. And so it's trying to, in the present, respond to the other individual on an equal basis. And then the third element that he looks at is the child ego state, where behaviors, thoughts, and feelings are replayed from our childhood. In other words, those responses we had in childhood to our parental figures, our caregivers. There's a lot of implications for what we looked at earlier in terms of attachment theory, because the attachment that we have developed will certainly play out in how we transact our communication with others. So the goals of treatment would be to enhance the patient's self-esteem, to restore him or her to a level of functioning prior to the loss, whatever the loss might be that they've experienced. And the relationship with the therapist as a self-object serves as a bridge to establish a support self-object environment outside the treatment arena. So again, helping clients develop different approaches to problems that may be obstructing their successful experience in life. This sort of sums up the two ideas that are shared this week in the readings around self-psychology, and I really ask that you consider using transactional analysis as a possible tool in your box, because it's a very nice way to be able to show what's going on in communication between individuals.